Good evening and welcome to Biz1st in Focus. With me this evening is a special guest from New York. He is the director of the Human Development Report Office of the United Nations, and he joins me this evening on Biz1st in Focus. A very good evening and welcome to the show, Mr. Salim Jahan. Nice to have you on board.
Thank you very much.
We're going to talk about HDI and why it is important to Sri Lanka and the contribution made by the President on Chapter 5, page 134 as well. But starting off, tell us, why is HDI so important to a country like Sri Lanka?
I think there are three answers to that. One is that HDI is important for any country because it tries to measure the development results of a country from a broader perspective. The other alternative is to look at GDP per capita, but then you are only concentrating on the income growth and the progress in terms of income. So my point there is that the HDI may be as vulgar as GDP per capita, but not as blind as GDP per capita to the broader aspects of human well-being. So that's one. Second, the HDI is also important for a particular country because it also tries to measure the kind of the social development in a country, not only economic progress. And the country can trace its progress over time as how its people are doing and that kind of thing. And the third is, it is also important for a country because we always try to compete with our neighbors. So it gives us a kind of a ranking and a value of broader aspects of human development of a particular country vis-a-vis other countries.
Sri Lanka has fared quite well over the last few years in terms of its HDI. Why is this so significant when comparing with our neighbors in the subcontinent, as you said before?
Exactly. I think two aspects of it. Yes, Sri Lanka has been doing very well in the HDI over the years. It is in the high human development as compared to, say, India or Bangladesh, which are in medium. Pakistan is in low human development. The value of HDI of Sri Lanka over the last 30 years has gone from 0.620 to 0.757, which is a 22% increase. If I disaggregate it a little bit and compare it with other countries, the life expectancy in Sri Lanka is 75 years, that of Bangladesh is 70, and that of India and Pakistan is 66 years. The under 5 mortality in this country is less than 10 per 1,000 live births, which is comparable to the achievements of OECD countries, for example. So on the social indicators, on the human development indicators, I think this shows the progress that Sri Lanka has made over time and is well ahead of its neighbors in South Asia or in East Asia for that matter.
Mr. Jahan, you've been attached to the Human Development Report Office since 1990. Why is this report different from the other reports that have been published so far?
I think this report is different for three reasons. One is this report is all about people. This report brings people at the center of the policy debate, dialogue, and policy making. So that's absolutely important. You don't see it in any other report. If I compare this report with the World Development Report, for example, by the bank, whatever topic they choose, the ultimate question they ask, how is it going to affect economic growth or per capita income? In this report, whatever topic we choose, we say ultimately what it means for the lives of people. So that's why this report is important, number one. Number two, this report is also important because in this report we also bring a lot of socioeconomic indicators, which are sometimes missing in a number of other reports. The maternal mortality rate, the under 5 mortality rate, the issues related to environmental sustainability, those kind of things. And the third and one important thing is that I should mention that this is a global report. But at the same time, the human development reports are produced nationally and subnationally. For example, Sri Lanka has produced a report on as a national human development report in 2014 on youth. I think our country office is now working for another report coming in 2016 and 17 on the whole question of inclusion and inequality. I'm making this point because those national human development reports, or even subnational ones in India, become a document for having policy dialogues vis-à-vis the government. They are also a major source of providing disaggregated data, either disaggregated in terms of regions or men and women or for socioeconomic groups. So this report, the global one as well as the national and subnational ones, are different from other reports that you have referred to.
Many reports have been published over the years. We've seen, as you correctly pointed out, the World Bank report. We see a report published by the IMF. We see many reports published by NGOs, INGOs working on the ground, so on and so forth. Can the HDI report compiled by you, used by government to improve the lifestyle of individuals? Has it been done in the past?
Yes, it has been done in the past. When we have,
Example, tell me.
I'll give you a very specific example. When we produced the Human Development Report, for example, on the whole question of financing on human development, Egypt took that report very seriously. And what we suggested there are three things. One is that there should be more resources going to the social sector, number one. There should be more resources within the social sector going to basic social services, and there should be more resources going to poor people out of those basic social services. When the report came out, the President took interest in it, and then there was a meeting of 17 governorates. Governorates means provinces in the Egyptian.
Are we talking about the current president, or are we talking about
No, I'm
Hassan
talking
Bala?
about 2003, not the current one.
Okay.
And then there have been discussion among the governors of those 17 states, and that changed the whole resource allocation, because what the report stated was that there was significant inequalities between Upper Egypt and the Lower Egypt, between Cairo and, say, the rest of the Egypt. So that actually changed the resource allocation from the more advanced regions to the more backward regions. So that's a prime example, or a classic example, how the report has influenced the policies of a particular country.
Do you think Egypt is doing well now, because what happened in 2003 transformed the country significantly?
In order to answer that particular question, you have to follow Egypt day to day, have to be tuned to what is happening. I cannot claim that I have that knowledge, that in-depth knowledge, so it would be quite unwise, immature, and also arrogant for me to comment on that question.
Moving forward, Mr. Salim Jahan, with regard to Sri Lanka, where do you see Sri Lanka in the next 5 years?
Where do you see Sri Lanka in the next 5 years?
Where I see Sri Lanka in the next 5 years?
Yes.
As a Sri Lankan, I strongly believe that we are moving forward. However, now I am asking you the questions, so if you may.
Okay, I'll take cue from you. I also see Sri Lanka moving forward ahead, and I think Sri Lanka has been doing very well, at least from the human development perspective as well as the economic progress. But I also would like to highlight some of the issues which, from my experience from other countries in similar situations, you can focus on. You can have public debates and dialogues and all kinds of things. One of the issues is related to the population and the aging population, for example. If I'm not mistaken, today 14% of the Sri Lankans are over age 65. If that is the situation, then as we move forward, there will be a care burden in the sense of people who are old would have to be taken care of. At the same time, I'm talking from my own experience in Bangladesh, my own country. And traditionally we always think that women have to take care of this care gap. In Bangladesh, a lot of the domestic workers are going overseas to provide domestic services to other families, leaving behind their own old parents and their children. So it is creating a care gap within the domestic economy where they are taking care of other families there. Sri Lanka may have the same situation where Sri Lankans are going outside to provide care, but there have to be care provisioning to families, to their children and grandparents, parents. That is some issue that you may have to look at.
You're speaking about issues with migrating workers, particularly those in the domestic work field. We are currently sending many domestic workers to the Middle East right now, Mr. Jahan. How can the Sri Lankan government improve the way it trains, supports, prepares and protects these domestic workforce during and after their employment overseas? Because you just spoke about the importance of protecting the young ones, protecting the elders, so on and so forth.
I think the report makes a very concrete proposal that, I mean, in many cases, we try to deal with the issues bilaterally. The labor sending country wants to have a discussion with the receiving country. What we have suggested that I think we should have a kind of a regional guidelines or sub-regional framework in terms of the rights and the benefits of the workers, at the same time basically training the workers not only in terms of skill but also in terms of the cultural norms, in terms of the requirements in the receiving countries. And the advantage of having that kind of a regional framework, which would be a regional public good, would be that then we as labor sending countries can negotiate with the labor receiving countries as a bloc. And under that context, then it would be easier for us to demand the kind of the rights, demand the kind of the dignity, demand the kind of the non-abuse of our workers when we send them. At the same time, it would also be useful for us as labor sending countries actually to train our workers with a minimum standard, to make them familiar with the kind of the laws, rules, regulations of the labor receiving countries. So I would say that is the path, rather than having bilateral discussions or having bilateral arrangements with others.
Do you think the Sri Lankan government is taking genuine interest to address the problems at hand?
Well, when you say genuine interest, I mean, that is a very difficult question. And I don't want to go there because I actually don't know the kind of the thinking that is going within the government or within the society at all. I mean, do you have genuine interest in seeing the improvement of the workers in overseas? Of course you do. I'm assuming it. So if we look at the policies of the government and the issues that they are dealing with and the issues that they are trying to push forward, I feel that the government is very much aware of the issues, and the government definitely, I expect, to take the measures to address those issues.
What is the benchmark in which you all place countries in terms of HDI? What is the benchmark that you all use?
Benchmark in what? I mean, we have 3 categories or 4 categories in order to categorize the countries. If your HDI value is less than 0.5, you are in low category. If your HDI is between 0.5 and 0.7, 0.5 to 0.55, you are in medium. If it is 0.55 to 0.7, you are in high. And then if you are above 0.85, you are in very high human development.
You have Norway topping the list this time around as well, HDI.
I'm sorry.
Norway topping the list this time as well.
That's right.
Why is the country different from other countries? Why is it topping the list every time you all issue a report for the last few years or so?
Okay, I think this is the Norway is topping the list for 3 reasons. One is that there are 3 indicators there. One is the long and healthy life, which is measured by expected life expectancy, and then there is this knowledge dimension, which is measured by expected years of schooling, mean years of schooling, and then there's the income part of it. If I start from the income part of it, Norway is a oil-rich country from the North Sea, and their income level is very high. So that's one. Second, I think Norway has been very successful in transforming its income into better life, into better years of schooling, into better life expectancy. So Norway is also a country which has achieved a life expectancy of more than 80 years, and then their schooling is also good. So taken all these three things together, their HDI is very high. But if I may make a point, I mean, the totality of human development in a particular country is not limited to the HDI. It is basically a measure of basic dimensions of human development. There are other aspects of human development like participation, like security, like gender equality, or like maternal mortality rate, for example, which are not part of this index. So I think it would be wrong to conclude that the HDI measures the comprehensive picture or reflects the comprehensive picture of a particular country.
There was positive change in Sri Lanka last year on the 8th of January with the change of government. Would this in any way contribute to an increase in the value of HDI when you compile your next report?
Well, I mean, again, I mean, there has been a change in government, and we welcome that. How it is going to affect the HDI would also depend on what are the kind of the policies Sri Lanka as a society takes. And we'll be awaiting that. If the policies are in the right direction, definitely they will be reflected in the indicators and the numbers, and the Human Development Index will go up.
President Maithripala Sirisena makes a contribution this time around to the Human Development Report. Chapter 5, page 134. How significant is this as far as the report itself is concerned?
You have done your homework.
I have for sure.
Yes. His Excellency the President has kindly contributed a special contribution on the whole question of sustainable agriculture. And that's very important, not only in increasing the credibility of the report, but also to the content of the report itself. Because one of the issues that we have introduced in the report is the concept of sustainable work that simultaneously enhances human development and ensures environmental sustainability. His Excellency the President has talked about some of the issues in agriculture. For example, the whole issue of the trade-off of using pesticides and other things to increase productivity, but at the same time the impact of those pesticides and everything on human health. He has also raised the issue of sustainable water management, which is absolutely important. He also has talked about increasing the productivity of agriculture by having more extension services and that kind of thing. So that particular discussion, apart from the fact that it has come from a head of the state, the content of it is so rich that we have also taken from there some of the implications, how we can make work sustainable, particularly in the rural economy. And that is important because even though globally, regionally, sub-regionally, the share of agriculture to GDP have gone down, still majority of the people are in the rural economy. So therefore, unless we can make the work in the rural economy sustainable, including sustainable agriculture, I think we'll miss the point and we'll miss the boat of improving the well-being of people.
You speak of 17 sustainable development goals in your report in question, Mr. Jahan. How does Sri Lanka fare in terms of these 17 sustainable development goals? What more needs to be done?
Well, and the sustainable human development goals have been adopted only last year. I think most of the countries are now in the process of integrating the sustainable human development goals in their national development plans and national development strategies. B, having an implementation plan in order to implement those goals, and C, mobilize resources for them. So I think the whole process has not started as yet. So I think down the road, if you and I met in 2 years' time, I think I'll be in a position to say how countries have been doing in terms of this.
Denmark's approach in its labour market is mentioned very commendably in your report. It says that it is an ideal way to achieve growth and so forth. Can it be applied to a country like Sri Lanka? How best can Sri Lanka aim to achieve this mix of flexibility and job security in its labour market?
I mean, in the context of the Denmark, what we talked about is flexi-security. I mean, what we basically suggested is that it's not the flexibility of the jobs, but the flexibility of workers. And in a country like Sri Lanka also, as you move forward with ICT and with your economic progress, you will see that in lots of areas there will be flexible workers. You may not need full-time workers under institutional arrangements. I mean, we are seeing in many sectors people are working part-time, people are working from home, people are working from a cafe. And if those things happen, then the question is there's a new informality. It's not the traditional informal sector. It is new informality with high-skilled workers. It is new informality with people with very high skills there. So what Denmark has basically done is to provide security in terms of pension, in terms of other benefits to those people rather than jobs. I mean, the legal profession or the law firms may be one particular area where you may not need permanent lawyers working from offices. What you may need in many countries in coming days are basically specific people for specific cases for a specific period of time. So if we can ensure their benefits, their rights, the obligations of the firms to them, you have a flexi-security system.
The private sector also has a very major role to play in terms of country's economy and in terms of what you just said right now, flexibility coming through in a country like Denmark and how it can be applied to a country like Sri Lanka. What is the role of the private sector in terms of the SDR?
Well, and the role of the private sector, particularly the topic that we have been dealing with in this year's report, is a major role. I mean, we cannot expect and we cannot see that the public sector will create all the necessary work and the jobs. That's not possible. That has not happened in most countries. You mentioned private sector. The private sector is a big spectrum. On one hand of it, you have big corporations, big businesses. In the middle, you have small and medium enterprises. At the other end of it, you have informal sector, for example. So if you provide incentives to even small and medium enterprises as well as to the informal sector, more jobs can be created, more work can be created. What is needed there, and we are not suggesting that you make informal sector formal overnight. What is needed there, that the informal sector has the legal protection, it has the kind of the access to technology, it has the kind of the facilities for better marketing, it has the kind of access to the imported machineries. In that way you can create a dynamism. Similarly, when you are dealing with big corporations or the multinational corporations, what is needed in many cases is a kind of a regulatory framework. Because under those kind of the regulatory framework, the corporations have to abide by some of the social and economic objectives of the country. So, to answer your question, the private sector is absolutely important, but at the same time, the social objectives of the private sector is also important because that's the flavor of the month.
Sri Lanka is currently the high human development category, ranked at 72 on the Human Development Index. How best can we improve our ranking?
That's a good question. I think the best way of improve your ranking, or rather the value of your HDI, would be one, in education also. I think there has also been a lot of discussion. You have a historical track record of good achievements in primary and secondary education. Lots of the Sri Lankans are talking about the tertiary education. And in tertiary education, what the report has stressed on is what we call STEM, science, technology, engineering and math. Because I think it is important that in tertiary education those things are highlighted, because in coming days we are not only competing with ourselves within a domestic economy, we are competing with other people from other countries in a globalized economy. So we have to be ready with that kind of an orientation with science technology, as that is the field, that is the sector that is going moving forward. Second, I think there has to be more improvements in the rural economy, in agriculture, because I think 30% of your labor force are still in agriculture. So unless we can increase the productivity of those people, unless we can increase the cropping intensity there, I think the contribution of agriculture, particularly in improving the livelihood of the people there, would be very much constrained. That is something I think that needs to be taken care of. That would improve the quality of education, if I may say so, because in many cases, it may not be true of Sri Lanka, but in many cases we often concentrate on the enrollment, but not necessarily what the children are learning. That is important. You can have also some thinking within the society, what should be the kind of the learning system, the curricula, the education system for the future, because one of the surveys have said that the children who have not been born as yet, their jobs have not been created as yet. So with that, I think we can say that what Sri Lanka should do is look forward and build on the achievements it has made, try to identify where there are scope for more achievement, and then look forward and seize the opportunities, because in the ultimate analysis, seizing the opportunity would be a foresight and not a fate.
Seizing the opportunity is the foresight and not a fate. Thank you very much, Mr. Jahan, for joining us this evening on Biz1st in Focus.
Thank you.
Pleasure to have you on board today.
All the best. Thank you.